Hey, how's it going? Today I'm talking about how a back of the pack runner finished the Dopey challenge from the last Corral. This is an interview with Page Bittner.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone RunDisney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
I will. Okay, I am so excited. We have an interview today. I have Paige Bittner with me, and she is going to share her running journey, including the Dopey Challenge 2026. Thank you so much, Paige, for being here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Allie.
This is so fun. I want to start off hearing, I guess, how you started with running. I know you have a different journey than some other runners do. So starting with how you got into running and then how did that switch to Disney running?
Sure. I was a gymnast growing up, and so I hated running. And then when I got to college, I was at a very small liberal arts school, and they, in order to have a baseball team, we had to field a women's track team. And so they would put up flyers all over campus about, please come join the women's track team. And I thought, okay, well, I was a pretty fast sprinter as a gymnast. So I showed up at the meeting. They signed me up. I started running Division I track. I ran the 100 and the 200. I still didn't do any distance running. And then my sophomore year of college, they started pole vault for women. And so my coach knew that I had been a gymnast and that I was a sprinter and decided I would be a pole vaulter. Still hated any kind of longer running than, the 10 steps that you run down the vault runway. And then when I graduated from college, Allie, there are no club pole vaulting leagues out there. It's just devastating to me, but there aren't any. And so in order to continue really any kind of exercise that I maybe enjoyed a little bit, I decided that I would start doing a little bit of distance running. So I would run a mile or two around my neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's wild. I mean, maybe I've never looked up pole vaulting clubs or anything like that. But you're right. Even after high school for some people, especially after college, finding a level of activity that fits your needs. We're not elite, we're not going to the Olympics, but how else? They have all these activities for kids. But where are the activities for the adults?
I know, right? Well, that's what I said. I loved pole vaulting. But, I transitioned a little bit into to just running for exercise. And then my roommates at the time decided they wanted to run a half marathon. Now, mind you, I had never run a 5K. I could run 100, 200, maybe a mile if my coach was trying to punish me. But, and I said, oh, yeah, this half marathon thing, I'll try that. So my very first race was the country music half marathon in Nashville. Had a blast. And then I moved from South Carolina to Maryland and knew that I wanted to find a running club. So kind of got into, over the next couple of years, a running club in Annapolis, Maryland. My first marathon with them in 2007, which was the Flying Pig Half Marathon in Cincinnati. Tons of fun. And then one of my friends and she heard that Disney was going to be having a Princess Half Marathon. And she and I both loved Disney. And we said, we're in. Princess Half Marathon, we'll do it. So we actually ran the inaugural Princess Half Marathon in 2009. I was looking at the pictures the other day. And ironically, we were in Corral A. There were only 3, A, B, and C.
Wow.
And we were in A. And I think it's because they had asked, have you ever run, a race before? And we checked yes. And so we ended up in Corral A. And we had so much fun with the Princess Half. We said, okay, we heard that they have this Goofy challenge, and why not do the Goofy challenge? And so we signed up for that in 2010. And what's ironic about that is I came back from that race, and my boyfriend at the time decided to take advantage of the fact that I was so exhausted, and he proposed like the night that I got back from Goofy. So
Oh
I
my god.
know, I have really good memories of Goofy because he still says to this day that he was taking advantage of my exhaustion and figured I would say yes. And, it's worked out so far. We've been married 16 years and have a 7-year-old. So can't really complain.
And that kind of just solidifies your love for the Disney because that's the memory you have
Mhm.
after doing Goofy as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I think my friend that I had done both the Disney races with before, she and I decided to do, I don't know, it was something about us doing like the first Disney races. They did a marathon relay in, I think it was 2012, and they only did it one time. And it was, she ran the first half and I ran the second half. They called it the Chippendale Relay. And we did that in 2012. And I had a lot of fun with her, but at the time I thought, I don't really know if I want to come back here without my husband because it just wasn't quite the same. And so we kind of put off Disney trips. And then I had my daughter in 2018. And then I kind of had I would say like a running revitalization in 2022. I thought, I really should get back into running races. And so I signed up for the half marathon at Marathon Weekend at Disney. And so that was kind of my reintroduction 10 years later.
Oh, yeah. And I should note, we did mention the Dopey challenge.
Hmm.
You chose Goofy first.
So they didn't actually
There was no.
have the Dopey challenge yet. I
Yeah.
mean, if they'd had it, I think we would have done it because we were, young and foolish. And we did train, but I don't feel like we trained to the extent that maybe we should have. Yeah, I think they started Dopey like 2 years after we did Goofy. And when they started it, I said, I don't think I'll ever do that because having to get up that early 4 mornings in a row, nope, not going to do it.
Yeah. Well, we can get. I was going to ask a question about the 4 mornings in a row.
Hmm.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, yeah.
But so it's interesting. You started out doing a sport way back when that the most anybody ever runs is 100 meters, like flat. I mean, gymnastics, you're running down that narrow bit to the vault.
Hmm.
I mean, I think 100 meters,
Maybe,
right? Like, I don't e
probably not even, maybe 50.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Transitioning to pole vaults and short distance running
Hmm.
and a mile, 2 miles, and then, oh, yeah, Disney princess, sign me up. Half
Yep.
marathon.
Yep.
A friend said it. Let's do it. And so you did the inaugural one.
Hmm.
And then, but so you didn't keep going with that because you did take that time off. So you don't get any of those like automatic bibs or anything
No,
like that
yeah,
for
we
those
didn't.
anymore, right?
We didn't have that much money at that time. Like I think I was 25, so I couldn't afford to keep going every year after that.
Yeah. A lot of people join running because it's a quote unquote cheap sport.
Uh-huh.
And then we like to go running at Disney.
Not a cheap
Not a
sport.
cheap sport. Not a cheap sport anymore. No, it's not. Okay, so now you've gotten back into the half marathon, and please forgive me. What year was that?
It was 2022. So right after
Okay.
COVID. I think it was the first marathon weekend back after COVID. Actually, I think they did virtual in 2021, and then they were back in 2022.
Okay. And actually, I'm going to back up even a second. I've never heard of this marathon relay that they did. Why do you think that they didn't do it again?
I think the logistics were really tough because essentially we started at the start line, and the first group ran basically to the TTC, and then they bussed us. The second group, we got bussed from Epcot to the TTC and just sat in the Magic Kingdom parking lot waiting for our runner to come. And then when they came, we handed off, I don't even remember what we handed off. It wasn't a baton because you wouldn't run that far, but somehow we handed off and then took off on our bit. So
Interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. You're the first person to have ever mentioned that to me. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, when I mention it to people, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, it was just 1 year. But if you go Google it, you'll see it out there.
Well, now I'm gonna have to go down that rabbit hole of Googling it
Yeah.
for sure. Give me another Disney rabbit hole to go down,
I know, right?
please. Twist my arm. So 2022, back in on the Princess, right? That one. And then what other races have you done recently?
So I really didn't do anything after that half marathon. Not even anything local. Oh no, I'm sorry. I did do the Baltimore 10K here. But at that point I already knew that I wanted to do Dopey. And sort of how that came about is my friend that I had run many, many years ago with, we sing together in a chorus. There are a couple of other ladies in the chorus that also do Run Disney, and they all told me, I think, gosh, probably in like the summer of 2024, that they wanted to do Dopey in 2026. And I said, oh, I don't think I want to do that. And then I said, you know what? If I'm ever going to do it, this is the time because I'm just getting older. Not getting any younger at this point. And so if you guys are doing it, that makes it more fun. So I'm going to do it too. And because I'm a planner, as you know, I looked at my calendar. I tried to figure out what are all the things I can do to kind of get ready for this. And having never done one of the challenge weekends, I decided to sign up for the Springtime Surprise Challenge in 2025 because I thought, all right, let's practice getting up 3 mornings in a row and see how that goes.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how I got back into training. And at that time, interestingly enough, I had also started to do some strength training, which I hadn't done since college, like on the track team, because it just wasn't really anything that I was interested in. But I really wanted to kind of get stronger as a woman in middle age and be able to kind of have that strength base. And so that was a little bit different for me as well, as I was leading up to Springtime Surprise.
Interesting. Now, you say because you'd never done the challenges before, but you'd done Goofy. At that time, it was the half marathon, full marathon
Yeah, it
still,
was, but
right?
but I had never done I'd never done more than 2 mornings in a row, and so I felt like doing, like, one of the 3 mornings, which I guess technically Springtime is the only one that's 3 because the other 2 were just 2 mornings in a row, but you can add the 5K if you really want.
Right. Yes. And so that's a great point because you'd mentioned it already 4 mornings in a row. That idea scared you.
Mhm.
And so 3 mornings in a row. Tell me how that was with Springtime Surprise last year.
So it was not it really wasn't that bad, I think, because I thought it was gonna be awful. Um, for me, because I am very type A, like, I basically treated each morning as sort of a test run for Dopey. So I looked back at my notes and, like, I have notes on, like, how the timing of each morning, like, what time I got up, when I left the room, like, how long I had to wait for a bus, and what time I got to the corral, and what I did in the corral while I was waiting, and what I ate, and all of that, just so that I could feel like I was prepared and knew what I was looking to do. So it really
Well, that
the 3 mornings wasn't too bad, believe it or not.
that's a very interesting point, and I love you and your type A personality and your perfectionist actions. You know, I am a recovering perfectionist
Yes.
because it did not work well for me. However, I am very interested, especially since you took notes. Would you share that springtime surprise weekend? Like, you don't have to do line by line, but from what you remember, like, what times did you wake up? What time
Mhm.
did you leave your room and get on the bus? And what did you do in the corral? The things you just mentioned, because those questions come up all of the time. And I'd
Mhm.
love to hear real life example of what you did and whether it worked or not for you.
Yeah. No, so I found that it takes me about 30 minutes from the time my alarm goes off till when I can walk out of the room. And I know some people it's slower, some people it's faster. It just depends on you. But for me, it was 30 minutes. So my alarm would go off. I think I had it set for 2:30 for the springtime races. So alarm would go off at 2:30. For me personally, I have to have a cup of coffee before I run. I know some people that's a no. For me, I need it. So I would hit the coffee maker. I would prepare it the night before. So all I had to do was hit the button. Um, I would get my clothes on, which I had laid out the night before. Um, I would make a piece of toast and put some peanut butter on it, get my hair up, make sure I had all the things. I had a checklist of the things I needed to take with me. So I would go down that, make sure I had everything. I with my coffee and the little cardboard to go cup that they have in the room. So if my alarm went off at 2:30, I got down to the bus usually about 3:05, and I don't think I ever waited more than a minute or two, maybe 5 minutes on the last morning for the 10-miler for springtime. But that was kind of my
Wow.
routine at the hotel. Then get on the bus. Thankfully, I was never on a bus that got lost. I did hear of a few.
There are
I
some
think you
nightmare
have
stories.
Yes, you have to prepare for that. But I would get to the start line area, kind of do the long walk from where the buses drop you off, get to the corral area, and I would typically make a potty stop and then go straight to the corral because I wanted to be close to the front because that's kind of my routine. I feel like that's something that I can control. And so if I can, I'm going to get there. And then I would just sit down with my piece of peanut butter toast and my water and my phone and just kind of relax for 2 hours until it was time for my corral to go. And for springtime, I was in Corral E, I think, which for that race was the next to last corral. So we were usually going off about 50 minutes before the last corrals did.
Okay. Yeah. So you're sitting around for a long
Yes.
time.
Yes,
Now,
and I'm the person who sits on the ground while everybody else stands up and starts pushing forward, and I would stay on the ground because I'm not going to stand for an hour.
I was just going to ask you that because it happens because I do the same thing. I go find a spot to sit and then guaranteed at some point, and I think I figured it out why, and I'll say that in a second, but at some point, everybody moves forward and you're just like,
Uh-huh.
what?
Like, we don't have
We
to do
still
this yet.
have an hour.
Yeah, it's like just as they start to see people walking by, they're like all pushing forward, and I'm like, no, no, no. You need to look at the time.
So I did notice at Disneyland. Now, of course, it's still Run Disney, but it is Disneyland versus World, so there are some differences. But at Disneyland, because I did all 3 races in September at the Halloween half marathon weekend, so I saw different bits for different races. And so they were having cast members move people up because they didn't have room in the back.
Ah,
And so
okay.
what I think the cast members were trying to do was just tighten it up and not have everybody just magically push forward, but to fill in the gaps kind of situation. But I think that ends up getting translated as, all right,
We gotta
we're
go.
we're a herd of cows. We're
Yeah.
moving, right?
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating. And I have heard other runners say, like, I don't want to stand around for a whole extra hour because it tires out my legs. And it does.
Mhm.
It does.
Absolutely.
Sit down.
Yep.
Bring a towel from home. I'm not going to say bring it from the hotel. I will not say that. But bring something from home, sit on it on the ground. Or I've even seen people bring like those gardening knee pad things that
Mhm.
you put on the ground. Bring that, sit on it.
Yep. Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
strong recommendation. Don't stand up until you absolutely have to.
No, no. And I love going back to your morning routine. I love that you're like, oh, yeah, I got 30 minutes. I'm like, give me an hour because it's going to take me like 15 to 30 minutes after the first time my alarm goes off before I even mosey out of bed.
You know what's so funny is I found like the first 2 mornings, both of springtime and Dopey, like I was awake before my alarm went off. I think my brain was just like, you have to wake up. Don't forget you have to wake up. And so like the alarm went off and I'm like, all right, well, now I'm getting out of bed. The third morning of springtime, it was a little bit harder. Like my husband had to nudge me and say, your alarm's going off. I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And what time would you go to bed?
I kind of progressively made it earlier. Like the first night I went to bed at 9, because it was too hard. Like if I'd tried to go to bed at 6 or 7, I don't think I would have been able to sleep, and that would be much worse. So it was like the first night was 9, the second night was 8, and then by the last night before the 10-miler, I was in bed at 7. And
Yeah,
I was
so
tired
just
enough that like it was easier.
Yeah, progressively tapering it kind of
Hmm.
situation. So you aren't somebody who at home the week before starts changing their sleeping pattern.
No, I had planned to do that for Dopey, and just with the timing, like, right after the holidays, it didn't work, so I tried to make sure I was in bed by 10, so that it wasn't, like, going from midnight to 7, but it didn't work otherwise.
Okay. Yeah. And that's okay. A lot of people don't change it, but I have heard other runners change it. And I thought, well, maybe a type A personality is going to do that. And thoughts were there, but that's okay. Shoot for the moon, land
Yeah,
amongst the
life got in the
stars,
way.
have the plan. Yes.
Yes.
Life got
Mhm.
lifey. Man, we can do
Yep.
that. When I go to Disney World, because I'm a 3-hour time difference, so I'm in bed at 6:30 on a race weekend. That's
That's nice.
3:30 Pacific.
Oh my god. How you do it.
Well, the first night, I usually lay there for an hour or 2,
Mhm.
but I will say I'm one of those people. I'm not bragging, everybody. I am one of those people. I can sleep anywhere at any time. It can be full blast sun, and I can be out. Like, I have a routine and I like start calming down. I do drink chamomile and lavender tea every night before bed. That's part of my wind down routine. And then if I start like deep breathing, laying there in the dark, I will fall asleep. But I am a unicorn in that way that I could go to sleep for the night at like 3:30 p.m. Pacific.
Not me. I used to be that way, but not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. Different strokes for different folks. Okay. So, springtime surprise, how did you feel about how your training went leading up to that and how you did, so to speak? I mean, I try and not say things like, "Oh, how was the race?" I usually say things like, "Did you have fun?" because that's the important part to me. But how did the race weekend go for you?
Yeah, so it went really well. I feel like I found your training plan for springtime before I think like in January when I was, or maybe even before that, I had been looking for a springtime surprise plan. And the only thing I could find on the Run Disney site was like the regular challenge plan, which had you go up to I think 12 miles. And I was like, why would I go up to 12 miles if I'm only running 10? Like that doesn't seem very efficient. And so I did some Googling and your site came up and I was like, oh, this sounds like a much more doable plan. And so I had gone up to like 7.25 is what your plan had me do for the 10 miler, and for the challenge. And, I felt really, really well prepared. I had kind of just gone and I would just run the miles. I did some of the speed work that you had suggested in your plan, but not very much of it. I was like, no, why? I just need to run, right? And I would say like I did okay, but I was for the 10 miler, I did have like slight balloon lady anxiety, even though I was a corral ahead of them, just because it was the first time I had ever run where I wasn't like running as fast as I could. Like I consciously, because it was so warm, I said, okay, I'm going to just kind of dial it back and just sort of go as easy as I can.
Yeah, because springtime surprise, Florida, April, that is a hot weekend.
It is.
It's gonna be very hot in a couple of weeks. Are
Yep.
you joining us at springtime surprise in a
I'm
couple
not
weeks?
this year. Not this year.
I didn't think so. I thought I remembered you have a bunch of other races locally for you
I do have a
that
couple.
you
Yeah.
you will be training
Hmm.
for. Okay.
Yep.
And so you've practiced the 3 mornings in a row and you're like, "Okay, well, I could do Dopey." Now by this time, you've already signed up for
I
Dopey.
had. Yep.
And so when did that official decision of, "Oh yeah, I will do Dopey 2026," when did that happen?
I think it was when I signed up for Springtime Surprise, which was like July of 2024.
Okay,
Um,
so like 18 months before the race weekend, that's
I
probably
said,
like 7 months
yep. I
before
said I'm doing it.
registration.
Yep. So
That's
registration morning that year was like, because I felt like I had planned everything for it to happen, and so if I didn't get in, it was going to be tough. I mean, I figured I could try to sign up with a charity, but I was so grateful when I got in, for when we did that last March.
Yeah. And so by this time, had you been looking at, you already mentioned my springtime surprise free plan
Hmm.
on the website. Yay, Google, for sending you there.
I
Love that.
know.
Thank
I'm
you,
so
Google.
grateful. Yes.
Did you look at the Dopey training plan on the website before signing up as well? Or had you started
Yes.
thinking about that after? Okay.
Yeah. After I found your springtime plan, I also saw the Dopey plan, and comparing it to other plans I had seen out there, I said, "Oh, this is much more civilized." Like, I think I could do this. I only go to 20 miles. I'm not jumping from like 4 miles one weekend to 18 miles the next weekend. Um, there are cutback weeks, but I said this seems much more like something I could do. And so I looked at your plan, and I had a conversation with my husband about what it was going to take officially before I signed up. Like we talked about, that I wanted to do it before then, but we had like the real come to Jesus conversation of, this means that in November and December, I am going to be going off on Saturday mornings for 5 or 6 hours by myself, and whatever that looks like, we'll have to make it work. And he said, "Great, I'm behind you. We'll make sure that happens. I'll be on child duty, and you do what you need to do to make sure that you get your training in." And so that was supremely helpful. And then I did take your training plan and I put it on my calendar, um, because at that point I knew that I was going to have a lot of work travel for the whole fall. And so I wanted to see, like, where might I need to adjust things? Am I going to be traveling personally for the holidays? Will I need to find other places to run? And so I had all that on the calendar, which also was great because then when I was doing other things, life wise or work wise, and I would look, I would say, "Ooh, that's the weekend I'm supposed to be doing 18 miles. I might not want to make sure that, I have a dinner party the night before because probably not going to work out well for me."
Right. Yeah. There's nothing like staying out late for a dinner party and having to go and run for 6 hours the next day.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome that your husband and your daughter were on board and you
Mhm.
had that hard conversation early on. Like,
Yeah.
this is what it's going to look like. That is very type A of you, and I love every second of it. I love
Thank
a
you.
planner. That's so awesome because that can be one of the worst parts of training. Of course, like being out there for 6 hours is not great, especially alone, but having family still at home and having in the back of your mind of, are they okay with me being out here for this
Mhm.
long? And you already knew that answer because you had had that conversation.
Yep, exactly, and I think, like, my daughter didn't totally understand what it meant. I mean, she was 6 at the time when we had the conversation, um, but my husband was really great because the past 2 years, has been like a "I want mom all the time" mode, and, he would, when she would say, "Where's mom? I miss her. I wish she was here," and he would say, "She set this goal that she wants to finish the Dopey challenge, and so she has to go off and run today, and we're going to support her in that, and you miss her, but this is something that she really wants to do and is working hard for, and so she's going to be gone." And I think that helped her a lot too, because one of the things that I really wanted from this journey was to show her what it's like to set a really hard goal and to go after it, and put in the work that it takes to be able to do that.
Yeah, and she gets to see her mom do hard things.
Mhm. Yep.
And she did, because I even accidentally was hanging around her and your husband at marathon
Mhm.
weekend on Main Street for the half marathon. I didn't even know
Yep.
that's who they were.
I know.
And
It's so funny.
yeah, we were all there right as a group cheering you on. And it was so fun to eavesdrop a little bit and hear how excited she was to
Mhm.
not miss you coming by.
Yes, I'm sure. She was like, "Has she come by? Dad, is she here yet?" I'm sure, I can just imagine. So
Well, I also think part of it was, I think she may have wanted to stand in front of me, which she, of course, could have,
Mhm.
because I think I was in the way a little bit, and so just, like, hearing, like, am I going to like, kind of panicking, like, am I gonna miss her? I can't see around this lady. And we didn't
Mhm.
know each other, right? And so I would like shift a little bit, I'd move up a little bit. And
Mhm.
your husband would say things like, I will see her and I'll point her out and we're not gonna miss mommy. We're not gonna
Mhm.
miss mom, right? And
Yep.
so it was great to be able to see the support system right there,
Mhm.
right on Main Street,
Yeah,
which was so cool. So you also documented your training all year.
I did.
Did that just kind of happen, or was it planned out for like an accountability, like between you and your friends who were all running together?
Yeah, so I kind of it just sort of when we started training, I think I was so excited to finally start training after I had been planning my training for a year basically. So in July when we started training, I said I and I'd had a lot of people ask me about it. I said, "You know what? I'm just going to start posting all of this on social media because I'm not somebody that has a huge social media following. It's all my friends and my family." And so I felt like it would be a way to kind of bring people into what I was doing because it was something that was really important to me. Um, and what was amazing is like how many people got so invested in making sure that like I finished this race. And so that I mean, I really appreciated that. I didn't expect that kind of response at all. It was really kind of, I guess, a little bit accountability, just so that I knew I was doing it. But it also was just to sort of have people come along for the journey.
Yeah, instead of having to, make a phone call to everybody every week,
Yeah.
and before you know it, you're making 50 phone calls and you're like, "Well, social media exists. Let's just post it on here." That's very cool. So how was training for you?
You know what? Training actually was great. Like I think because it was so like what you provided was easy to follow and methodical, which is important to me. And also knowing that I had the freedom to occasionally like fall off the wagon for a day or two if I needed to wasn't going to ruin anything. It wasn't going to, mean that I wasn't going to finish. And I mean, there were some challenges here and there, especially with the work travel I had. Like, I think I did like some final Dopey statistics, and I think it was like I ran in 2 different countries, maybe 6 different states and 10 different cities or something like that, between
My
work
God.
travel and personal travel from July through December. And so I just kinda had to get creative sometimes and did a lot of hotel treadmill time, especially for speed work and some walks sometimes. But I would say overall, like, training it wasn't easy, but training was not as hard as I had expected. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. I think one is that I really appreciated that you tell us to run the long run really slow. Um, because prior to that, I always ran in the gray zone. I would just go out and run whatever my race pace was. Like my race pace was the same as my long run pace. Um, and I think that would really burn me out on the long runs. But this time I tried to treat long runs as an adventure, because I knew that not only could I walk if I wanted to, but that I could run as slow as I wanted to and however I felt that day. And so I went to all kinds of different places, even just around where I live, like different trails. One day, I live in Maryland. I ran to Pennsylvania on a trail. Um, just kind of all kinds of things. And so treating it like an adventure that way really sort of made the long runs fun. So instead of something that I was dreading, I was able to look forward to them. And because I was going so slow, I could look around me and see the animals and the trees and one day the snow coming down. So I think that that really made it a much more enjoyable training experience for me than previous times that I had done, especially the long runs. Just being able to enjoy them instead of them be something that I was dreading.
It's wild how much different you can make your day, you can make your training run be by just adjusting the
Hmm.
pace. And do you know where or why you got the idea of running previous long runs at that race pace?
I think I just went out and ran. Like it was just, I'm running intervals, because I would run 30-30s, and I'm just going to go out and I'm going to run for 30 seconds and walk for 30 seconds. And whatever pace it is the pace it's going to be.
Yeah.
And like I would be exhausted. And I did actually go back and look at my long runs for the 2022 half marathon. And they were probably about 2 minutes per mile faster than I did everything for Dopey this time. And my heart rate was like really high the whole time for 3 hours for a 12-mile run. And, now I'm like, oh man, no wonder I would come home and crash and not be able to do anything until the next day.
Yeah. And now it's making sense. But you were working with the information you knew at the time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
When you knew better, you did it different.
Mm-hmm.
And you felt different.
Yep. I think the day that I had my 19-mile run, I actually ended up having to take a Friday off because I had a lot of stuff going on that Saturday. And so I ran the 19 miles and then ended up having a last minute concert I had to go sing in with the chorus I sing with. So I was like, literally finished my run, came home, got in my Epsom salt bath, hopped in the shower, and drove another 45 minutes to where the concert was, and then stood on a stage singing a concert that night. Which in previous long run life, there's no way that would have happened. I would have been asleep on the stage or not able to stand up or, groaning as I stood up. So I could definitely tell a difference at that time.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. So training went well. Tell me about race weekend.
Oh, race weekend. Well, let's actually talk about race week because
Yeah,
for me,
great.
the Monday of race week is when lots of things kind of shifted.
Is this when
And
you texted me?
yes, it is.
I remember the text well.
I'm sure it was the most panicked text I've sent in a
panic.
long time. So, for me, training was because training went so well, and even the 20-miler, easy peasy, as easy as 20 miles can be. But, and you always hear the hay's in the barn. You've done the training. The race is your victory lap. It's going to be easy. You just go do it. And so I had that in my head. And I mentioned earlier that for Springtime Surprise, I was in the next to last Corral. And so I paid attention to where the balloon ladies were, but I wasn't really that concerned. And I kind of just assumed that I would be in the next to last Corral again, because that's where I typically always am for runDisney races. And so on Monday, when the bib numbers come out and that email and everybody starts speculating, I was looking at what people were speculating, and my bib number was corresponding to Corral G, which, for those of you who do not know, is the last corral, basically a few minutes before the balloon ladies. And I panicked because I had not planned on that at all. My plan was to have at least a 20-minute buffer on the balloon ladies for, as I thought of it, emergencies. I knew I could keep the pace I needed to keep, but it's what if your stomach's upset? What if you fall and scrape your knee and you need a Band-Aid or anything like that? And so thinking that sort of emergency buffer was going away just had me in panic mode. And so I texted you. I can't even remember what I texted, but it was something like, oh my gosh, Allie, what am I going to do? I'm in Corral G, I think, and I don't know what to do. How am I going to pace this? How am I going to run this? My whole plan is out the window. That was part of it too, as I had planned on walking everything until the marathon. But if you're in Corral G, it's really hard to walk the 10K and the half, unless you are a really fast walker. Or it's hard to walk it and then be able to have a buffer if you get an upset stomach a little later. So I knew I needed a new plan, and that was when I texted you in a complete panic.
Yes. Spiraling out of control.
Yes. The anxiety was whoa, just
Yes.
going.
Yes. And so since you brought it up, what did we talk about? Do you remember?
We talked about trusting the process, trusting my training. You told me that I had put the work in and that this was completely in my reach and that you had no doubt that I would be able to finish. And you gave me some good pacing strategies kind of over the course of the next couple of days for each race. just to make sure that I could go as fast as I needed to and still get a few like longer walk breaks in, but still be able to finish with a nice little buffer on the balloon ladies.
Yes. I happen to be one of those people that says all of those phrases that you mentioned before. The hay is in the barn. You've done all the work. It's the victory lap. You've put in months and months of training because at that point, you had technically been training since January because you
Hmm.
trained for Springtime Surprise and you didn't stop training. It wasn't official Dopey training yet, but you
Hmm.
hadn't stopped training. So you technically have been training for 12 months. Yes.
And I knew all that, but I think for me, it was the shift of being 99% sure that I was going to finish because of all the training that I had put in to maybe being like 80% sure. And being a hope to soon be covering perfectionist myself, that I was going from 99% to 80%, like that just kind of threw me for a loop. But that's part of it. And I kind of what I told myself too is because at that point I said, oh my gosh, like all these people are following me. Like so many people are invested in me finishing, and now like there's a slightly larger chance that I might not finish. And how am I going to feel? Like I'm going to feel like I let all these people down, even though it's not really letting them down, but they were excited. And what am I going to show my daughter? And so I kind of tried to reframe things and think, well, you know what? If I don't finish, if I fail, that's an even bigger lesson for her, that things are still worth doing, even if you don't succeed at them. There's still huge benefit to doing Dopey, even if I had not finished. And so when I was able to reframe it that way, that kind of helped me go into the rest of the weekend with a better mindset and still have
Y-
fun, which was the whole
Yeah,
goal, right?
exactly. Because I think by Wednesday, I had texted you and I was like, so how are we feeling? What do we need to adjust? Because the 5K, for anybody who's not sure, Dopey Challenge is the 5K, 10K, half marathon, and full marathon. And it starts Thursday. So Thursday is the 5K, Friday is the 10K, Saturday, the half marathon, and Sunday is the full marathon. So I texted you Wednesday night and was like, okay, how are the nerves? Where do we need to adjust? And by that point, you were like, I've come to terms with it. If I don't finish, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
And so
So
you
that, and
had
yeah, yeah, I was able to do that. And I think too, like it helped. A huge part of that was that I was with my friends as well. We all got down there on Tuesday and went to dinner and then did the expo on Wednesday. And so that was so much of what I was looking forward to, that just being around other people, three of whom were also in Corral G. So we kind of were commiserating together. That helped too, because I didn't feel like I was in this alone at all. And one of my friends did run all of the races with me, and so that helped a ton as well, because she was a great support, and we kind of helped each other out too, because we both of us had sort of some low points along the way.
yeah, so you were all in it together and if you're going down, you're going down together.
Exactly.
So that brings us probably to the 5K or
Hmm.
let me back up a second. Was there anything different this week since this is now your longest challenge? New training structure. Was there anything different about race week this time around versus Springtime Surprise Challenge or Goofy or any of the other race weekends?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a much longer taper than I'd ever had, so I felt incredibly rested, like, and I had no niggling pains, which I was really surprised at, because I'd had like throughout training, things would pop up. When you're running that many miles, like you're not going to go completely pain free. Like I had a wonky ankle at one point from stepping into a hole, and different things with like toes and blisters and all of that. But I loved having such a long taper because all of those things had healed up, and so and I had cut back on strength training, to just like light weights. And the week of the race, like just a couple walks here and there. So everything felt really fresh and really ready to go. Um, to the point that I was concerned that I was going to try to go too fast in all of the 3 races leading up to the marathon.
It's a problem. It's a
Mhm.
great problem to have, to
Yeah.
be like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta tone it down because I
Mhm.
still have the marathon."
Yep.
And, you didn't mention this, but I had looked back at our Instagram DMs. You
Mhm.
had also had a hamstring strain
I did. Yeah, in the spring, and
before.
I
Mhm.
had gone to PT for that, because I think it popped up before I started training for springtime, and then kinda just got a little bit worse as it went on, and so I'd had to kind of baby that along, but it didn't give me any trouble during Dopey training, which was awesome because I was worried about it.
That's great. Yeah, so by the time race week rolls around, hamstrings good, rolled ankles good, all of these
Mhm.
other little nagging things that creep up when you're training. I mean, you're running a lot of miles. You don't have to be in miserable pain, but we do expect some amount of discomfort and the occasional injury. You know, it's not would I love it if it never happened? Sure. But it's not uncommon. So by the time you hit race week, you're like, "Oh, this is great. I
I
gotta
was
tone it
feeling great.
back."
Yep.
That's great. So tell me more about with this race week and the
Mhm.
races themselves.
Yep. So the 5K, our plan was to walk it, and actually the 4 of us, there of the 4 of my group that went together, there were 2 of us that were pretty similar paces that knew we would be running everything together, and then the other 2, one is significantly faster than we are, and the other is a little bit slower, but we said that we would all walk the 5K together since not really timed, and then you're just there to have fun, and so that was great. Like, I had the best time at the 5K, just walking and talking with friends and getting our pictures and having our, beer at the finish line and the cup, special souvenir cup, and I think at that point, because I had also kind of reset my mind that the goal was to have fun no matter what happened, like, it really helped me just enjoy the 5K and walk it at a comfortable pace and get some photos, and I have no idea what time we finished it in, but they weren't trying to kick us off the course, so it was what it was.
Perfect timing.
Mhm.
Great. So 5K is great. Did you go to the park after the 5K or do
We
any
did.
resorts or anything? Mhm.
Yeah, we went to, think we I think we went to Animal Kingdom, but we spent about 5 hours in the park that day, and then went to the meetup. A couple of us came to the meetup to see you. Oh, that was on Friday, so maybe we didn't. I don't know. We went somewhere on Thursday after the 5K, but tried to spend like 5 or 6 hours in the park, just to be on our feet and have some fun, but not really kill ourselves for the rest of the weekend.
Great. Great. So back in to the resort early enough
Mhm.
to, get some rest. And then 10K.
10K. So the 10K was interesting, because um, we got to the front of the corral, sat down, ate our breakfast, chit-chatted, and one thing that I did is on my phone, because I was posting everything on social media, I would just post everything from the day before on the morning sitting in the race, because I figured nobody was up yet who was gonna be looking at it. So it kind of was good to pass the time that way, as I would edit some photos and post them and, do that. And I remember the morning of the 10K, we, when we came out of the corral, you were on the other side, um, and so we saw you and waved, and
And ran into
so
the people in front of you.
yes, ran into the people in front of us because, why? For some reason, our corral every morning had this guy who'd maybe never done it before, and so he would, like, walk really fast and then just stop with his little, corral G sign, and so then when he stopped, of course, it's like this everyone just backs up and, stops and runs into the people in front of them, so that became
It
an
was like a
interesting
cartoon situation when it
Yes,
happened. It was
yeah,
just like an abrupt stop, and then everybody squishes to the front.
mhm, yep. So then when we crossed the start line, our plan was to walk the first mile, and I highly recommend that if you can, especially when you've been like cramped up in a corral for 2 hours. And when we got to mile 1, now mind you, because I'm type A, I had done balloon lady math to know about when, and I wasn't concerned about them for the 10K so much, just because it's only 6 miles. Um, and Girl won, and they announced that the balloon ladies are 4 minutes behind us. And we were at the very front of Corral G. And based on what they had predicted, the balloon ladies would start. I think it was supposed to be like 10 minutes behind us. And I knew we had lost a minute or two because we were walking. But when I heard that, I turned to my friend. I said, "We got to go. We have to pick it up." Um, and so we just made sure that we still ran our race. Like we didn't, you know, go any faster than we had intended. But I think what was stressful about it for me is I thought, okay, well, I hope neither of us has to go to the bathroom because we don't have that happy little bathroom buffer. And so we just kind of ran our pace, which was fine. And um, by the last 2 miles, we knew we were okay. And so we kind of let up a little bit and just enjoyed, where we were going. But we definitely didn't stop for any characters because I think we would have gotten swept starting where we did if we'd stopped for characters on the 10K.
Okay. Yeah. So a little bit more of a panic after the
Mm-hmm.
leisurely 5K. Yeah. And then what did you do after the 10K? So we did have the meetup in the
Yes.
afternoon at 2 in the afternoon. What did you do in between?
I think that was the day we went to Animal Kingdom for a couple of hours and then came over to the meetup. Um, and then went back to the resort. And I did, of course, have an evening routine. Like I would get in the bath, I would, um, lay everything out. I would look at my checklist to make sure that I knew what I was doing. Um, and for me, that was soothing because then I felt like I had controlled what I could control for the morning and laid all of that out. But yeah, I would say Friday was probably the most low key um, evening because I think we even like got food from the resort and brought it to the room.
Perfect. In preparation for the half marathon.
The half marathon. Yes. So the half marathon, I had originally thought that I would walk the whole thing to save my legs for the marathon. But with being in the last corral, I knew that I couldn't do that. And so um, we just decided we would run our easy pace for the first 10 miles to make sure that we were comfortably ahead of the balloon ladies. And so we did that. And I think what was so surprising to me about that was running our easy pace was really, really easy. Um, it felt super comfortable. I didn't feel like I was stressing any part of my body out. Like it was just like any other long run almost. And then when we got to mile 10, we decided that we were just going to walk the rest of the way. Cause at that point, I think we'd built up maybe a 16 or 17-minute buffer. And so knew that, unless for some reason something really went wrong, we would be able to finish in time. And it was starting to get hot then. So I was really happy that we were going to be walking from that point on.
That's perfect. Yeah. So easy pace for the majority of the time. Make it feel easy. Your legs weren't feeling too exhausted. And then you had a buffer to be able to walk the rest, to not overheat, to not exhaust yourself, because this was only day 3 of 4. You hadn't even hit half of the miles that you were going to run all weekend yet. You
Exactly.
don't hit that until
Yes.
like 2 miles into the marathon.
No, you do not. Yeah, so after we finished the half, we didn't have any park time planned for that day, but we did have a brunch scheduled at the Grand Floridian Cafe. So we went over there. And this is a tip of something that I never really thought about, but that I would recommend or caution people about is because it happened to me after the 10 miler at Springtime Surprise as well. I had a cocktail at lunch thinking, okay, like, I'm not going to bed anytime soon. It's going to completely be out of my system. It was like a champagne cocktail. I thought I want to celebrate that we finished the half marathon. I felt awful for like the whole afternoon. I was so glad that we were not going into a party. I just had one cocktail, which is not, I mean, abnormal for me. Like I will, have a cocktail or two, regularly on a weekend. But I think for some reason, because my body was just so tired, it was not processing that as well. And so I went back to the room and just relaxed in the bed. And finally, by the time it was bedtime, I felt better because I guess it had worked its way out of my system. Just a tip, maybe try that in your training after a long run to see how your body does with that. Because at the time I thought, oh my gosh, have I ruined the whole weekend by having one cocktail because I'm now going to feel sick and not do well? But it was okay. But just sort of an aside for people to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, that's a great tip because it's not something you think of, right? We say nothing
Mm-mm.
new on race day or race week, but you regularly have cocktails. Like, that's not new to your system. Like, for
Mhm.
somebody like me, where I have a glass of wine once every 6 months, that that would be a big deal. That is new on race day.
Yes.
But for somebody who it's part of their regular activity, you never would have even thought that that would give
Mm-mm.
you trouble.
Yeah, and it just made me feel bad. Like I wasn't, I didn't have stomach upset or anything like that. I just felt like, ugh, like I just don't want to do anything or go anywhere. And so, yeah, just test that out in a non-race weekend if it's something that you plan on doing, or just wait until you're done with everything to have the cocktail.
Wait until after the marathon is done or
Mhm.
after your last race and, cross the finish line if you can at the marathon with your pineapple cider or your whatever from wherever you like to get it. I know people used to love to get the margarita from Mexico, but you don't
Yeah.
pass Mexico on the way
Nope.
back.
You do not.
You
Not
do not.
anymore.
Mm-mm. No, no. Okay, so half marathon evening. Now you're feeling better, getting ready for bed. How are the nerves?
I was very
Besides
nervous at that
this,
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, besides the cocktail thought, but yeah, so very nervous at this point.
Yeah, yeah, because 'cause I'm thinking, like, I've done everything up to this point. I have a whole marathon to run tomorrow, and I just don't know, like, if I'm gonna be able to do this, if I'm gonna be able to, what if something goes wrong? Like, what if I step on something funny or, just any of the things that could happen. Because at that point, like, you start to think about all the work that you've put in, and that one little thing could change it is tough. Like it's really hard to kind of have those thoughts. But thankfully I was so tired that I went to sleep anyway. And so we got up 1:30 on marathon morning, 1:30 a.m. to try and be on the first bus. Because again, wanted to be at the front of our corral. And I did have a bit of a nervous stomach that morning. Like I could just kind of feel the butterflies. But I think having had the previous 3 mornings and doing the same routine, my 30 minutes before, get up, eat, get dressed, all of that made a big difference because I knew exactly what I was doing and it felt familiar, even though I was really tired. But I knew what I was doing. Um, and we got to the corral, sat down. I feel like this morning we ended up having to stand up and like we were so squished in, like there wasn't any place to sit down at all. So I did end up like standing for an hour, which was annoying. But at that point, I feel like at that point, most dopey runners are just ready to get going and be done. And so that was kind of the hardest wait is I'm like, oh my gosh, we still have another 90 minutes before we're even going to like walk around, to get over to the start line. Um, and I used the Rally app for the marathon, which was really fun because my husband sent it to a lot of friends and a lot of family members. And so all of the spots were taken up. And if you never use the Rally app, essentially what happens is people record voice messages for you to hit at when you get close to each mile marker. Um, and so, like mile 1, we walked. I was nervous, but it felt good to walk and kind of get moving. I was still feeling a little nervous through Epcot, and You had given me our pacing plan, which was to kind of start out at our easy pace. And then when we hit the highways to just go a little bit faster, like more like, closer to a moderate pace. And so I was nervous when we were going the easy pace because I didn't feel like we were gaining on the balloon ladies at all. So like through Epcot, it's like I knew I was doing what was right for my body, but was still a little, they're only 5 minutes behind us because I think on marathon morning it was the same as the 10K, and they were supposed to start like 10 minutes behind, and it was like 7 minutes behind or something. Um, and
Yeah, they had
so
started a little bit earlier than planned, I believe, because the anticipation of the heat, because
yeah,
the night before, they started talking about the heat warning and
hmm
talking about what flag, and they did put a yellow flag, which means caution. So they had already been talking about it's gonna be hot, and so
hmm
I do believe that for the marathon, the balloon ladies started a little bit earlier than they had originally planned, which they talk about, Run Disney talks about, that's a possibility.
they can do it. Yep. So I mean, I will say one of the nice things about being so far back is that there were, especially early on in the marathon, there were no lines for characters. So we did get a couple of character stops in. Like we would see like one person in line, and so I'm like, well, this is only 20 seconds. Let's run over and take this photo. So
Yeah.
that was nice. And then when we hit the highways, the sun wasn't up yet, so it was humid, but it was still relatively cool. And so I think from about mile 4 to the Magic Kingdom, like, we were just running. Like, I mean, we were doing our intervals, run walking, but it was significantly faster than I had done in any race prior to that, and it felt really good. Like, it felt as easy as our easy pace had the day before. I know, right? I'm gonna, credit that to all of the speed work that I did. Because otherwise I don't think it would have felt as good as it did. And then when we got to Magic Kingdom, we walked. We did have to take a bit of a longer bathroom stop. And I think by the time we got to Magic Kingdom, we were maybe 15 minutes ahead of the balloon ladies. So we had gone from, I think we'd gained like 10 minutes on them and on the highways just from running a little faster with our moderate pace. And we walked through Magic Kingdom, and we came out of Magic Kingdom, and the sun was starting to come up. And we went through the TTC, and I turned to my running partner and I said, I think we could keep up this moderate pace on the roads to Animal Kingdom. And she's like, okay, well, if you want to try that, we can do that. And as we went through the TTC, my husband and daughter were there. And so I said hello. And there was somebody standing next to them that was handing out ice packs, like the ones that you crunch together to make them start getting cold. And I was like, why are they handing an ice pack? I'm like, it's not that hot. Like, I'm fine. Like, this is all, we're going to run our moderate pace from here to the Animal Kingdom. um, and it's like you come through the TTC, and once we came through the TTC, then we were in the Magic Kingdom parking lot. And the sun was beating down on that parking lot. And within about half a mile, like, I started to not feel so good. And I was like, oh, like, this is not a normal feeling. So I took the ice pack and I shoved it in my bra. And we kept sort of like, so I turned to my partner and I said, yeah, let's not do moderate pace just yet. Like, let's take it easy. And then I had a point where I was like, I think I just have to walk a little bit. And then we finished the parking lot, and then it was sort of the shaded Star Wars mile. And I said, okay, well, I can run this. And so we kind of did our normal intervals, like easy pace, and that felt great. And then we came out of there. This was probably about mile 15, and the sun was beating down again. And what I was feeling in my body is that when I was running, I would start to get kind of like the cold chills, which is not a good sign in the heat. Now, when
Were
I
you
was walking,
sweating?
I was sweating still. I was sweating. I wasn't lightheaded or anything like that, but I could feel like my body was trying to cool itself off. And so I I had this sort of moment where I said, okay, like, this is not worth my health. This is not at all like part of it was my mom. My mom did not want me to do Dopey because she was convinced that, like, I'm too old to do this stuff and that, like, I shouldn't be running this far and I was gonna push myself too hard. So there was a voice in the back of my head that, like, I do not want my mom to say, "I told you so." So
Mom can't be right. Mom
no.
can't be right.
Yeah. So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna just walk." And I said, "I have to walk the rest of this marathon in, and if I get caught by the balloon ladies because I'm not walking fast enough, then it will be what it will be." And so about mile 15, I just started walking. I passed a medical tent. I got another um, ice bag, shoved it in my bra, kept walking. And walking, I felt fine. Like I wasn't getting any kind of cold chills. I don't know what the difference for me is with running and walking. I guess I generate more heat when I run. But when I got to mile 16 and had been walking for a mile, I had averaged like a 15-minute mile. And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, let's just keep walking at this pace and just see what happens." And I think like I had cried a little bit between mile 15 and 16, thinking that like if I don't run, then I might not finish this race. And I'm just going to have to deal with that and that it will be okay. Like I've already accepted that it's going to be what it is. And so then I just kept walking. The next mile I'd averaged like 15, 30. And so I was just walking and I was walking like balloon lady pace or faster. And I credit a lot of that, I think, to part of what you had us do in training, which was some paced walking and, trying to walk faster at times. And so that walk and knowing like how to have form for walking. Like I wasn't making big, long strides. I was just turning my feet over quickly. And so I just kept going. And like I hit mile 20. And I think what was hard too is like not knowing where the balloon ladies are in the marathon. Just for anyone who does track the balloon ladies, you will only get an alert of where they actually are when they cross a timing mat. So I think it's at like the 10K, the half marathon. And then for me at that point, it wasn't again until 20 miles. And so I hit mile 20 and knew had gained on them from when I had started walking. And also at this point, because it was so hot, like the ambulances were driving up and down the side, the bikes were going up and down the side. There were people passing out on either side of me. Like I saw, I think 3 people like pass out. People were looking really rough as well, like still trying to run along. And I'm just walking, just kept walking. And I credit a lot of that too to my training, just because I had put all of that time in that I was able to just keep going. And I think I got to Blizzard Beach like 2 minutes after they had cut the course. So they just kept directing me on. And at that point, honestly, like I was not upset. I said, okay, like, I this is out of my control. I'll probably get 26.2 miles on my watch and I'm okay with that. And I totally understood why they cut the course because the medics were just so overwhelmed. Like we had just seen so much. And so kept walking. And at that point, once I passed the exit to Blizzard Beach, all the people that had been in Blizzard Beach, we were all gummed up together. So I couldn't actually walk very fast anymore. It was a little bit slower because everybody was walking at that point. Went through Hollywood Studios, and I think it was somewhere on the boardwalk, like at mile 24, that I realized I was actually going to finish, and had like another sort of emotional moment, because it had really been this journey of starting off really strong, getting knocked down by the heat, deciding that it was okay if I didn't finish because I didn't want to put myself in harm's way if I could avoid it. And then like miles 24 to 26.2 were like a big party. Everybody was excited. People were still struggling, but I think at that point, and nobody was able to run because it was so crowded. Like people were like sprinting by on the left side, but there was no way to run intervals, so we all just walked. And then I finished and was, incredibly grateful. And I still felt good too after finishing. So it was, just a really incredible feeling to put all of that work in and still be able to finish even out of Corral G.
Yeah. It and in the heat,
Yeah.
because the heat takes a lot out of you. You're telling the story, and I didn't realize that you were having chills.
Yeah. I know. Well, I didn't tell anybody that at the time for sure.
And had you told me that, I would have instructed you to seek medical attention
I know.
and cut, like, sweep yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you did make the good choice to walk, so that was a bonus, and it all worked out in the end. The ice
Mm-hmm.
worked, the
Yeah.
med tents with the ice, shove it in your bra, get yourself cooler, that is great, but seeing all those people around you just passing out and kinda dropping like flies, that's scary.
It is. Yeah. And I think, and I did tell myself, I kept walking, but I said, if I feel any of that again, like I'll self sweep and, head to the med tent and say, hello, I need help. But I felt fine when I was walking. So it was like, okay, just keep on going.
Yep. That's great. Now, what would you I have 2 questions
Okay.
related to this. So, what would you tell yourself now that you know what you know, you've done the Dopey challenge, what would you tell yourself during your worst training session?
Hmm. I think probably that one training session does not define a whole training block. And if you have a terrible day or you miss a session, like that doesn't matter. It's the consistency, it's the just going through. And I think also just that it's worth it in the end. You can have a bad day and it just feels awful and you don't want to keep going or you don't want to do it again, but that's not a reason to stop because it won't always feel that way.
That's great advice. And what would you tell somebody who wants to do their first Dopey challenge?
Okay. I think I would say it is absolutely worth it. It requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of heart. But it's so much fun. Like even, here I am talking about the marathon and I'm crying and, but but it's fun. That's why we keep going back and doing it. And so I think just know what it requires, and know that in order to have that fun, you do have to put the training in. Um, and I think for me, like the biggest lesson is trust your training, trust the process because they will work out in the end. I really think if I had continued training the way I trained for previous races, I don't think I would have finished Dopey. I think when I hit the Magic Kingdom parking lot and started feeling hot, I don't think I would have been able to continue walking at the speed I did or anything like that. So I think if you really put the training in, trust the process, you can absolutely do it.
Will you do it again?
Uh, I don't know. I'm definitely not doing it next year, 2027. When I finished the marathon, I said never again, just because it was so hot and you can't really train for that. I live in Baltimore and it was most of my longer runs, it was anywhere from 25 to 40 degrees. And so running in humidity where it's, what was it, 90% humidity when we started, I think. And like the temperature was 75 by the time I finished. You can't really train for that very easily. So I said I would never do it again. I think I might, but I don't have specific plans to do it again. And I would try to figure out a way to train for the heat the next time, I think. Whether it's like run on the treadmill every now and then with a heater blowing on me or, take a couple of trips in December to warm places and run there. Might do something like that, but I don't have any plans to. But I won't say never at this point. I'll say it's possible.
It's possible. Yeah, so maybe you're joining me for that 2028 marathon/Dopey
Yeah,
that
potentially.
apparently you all have convinced me to do.
Yeah, it's very possible. But I have a couple halves coming up. I'm signed up for Wine and Dine, the challenge, and then hoping to do Princess next year as well.
That's great. Do you have anticipation of what your goals are for those now that you know that you can finish? You've
Mhm.
clearly done that time and time again. What is the next step for you with these races?
Yeah, I think really just being able to run faster so that I can get in more character stops. The part of the marathon where we were running at a significantly faster pace than I thought I could go, and it was felt easy. Really, kind of gave me the thought that I can get faster and be able to do that so that if I stand in a 5-minute character line, like I'm not going to be stressed out that I'm going to get swept. So I think that's my goal for Wine and Dine, and we'll see what the goal is for Princess. I don't really have any specific time goals, because all of my races earlier in my life, I will never PR, because those are just significantly faster, which is fine. But so my goals are just fun goals, not really time goals.
I love a fun goal, like just going, having a good time without a care in the world, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that makes the race day experience wildly different. Not having the
Mm-hmm.
balloon lady scaries, whether you can get character stops or not, because sometimes they're super popular characters and you just like it's a 30-minute line. Like you just can't control that, right? So I I love the have fun goal. That's absolutely amazing. Are there any last bits of things that maybe you learned about yourself or learned through this training that maybe surprised you or might be a good lesson that somebody else could take from it as well?
Yeah, I think for me, I would say number one, trust yourself. Like, don't doubt what you can do. And I will also say, like, over the 18 months of really doing focus training, especially strength training, I have a much healthier relationship with my body than I have had, like, probably in the past 20-25 years. Um, just because I'm not really concerned about what I look like. It's just more about what my body can do, and that it can lift heavy things and that it can do hard things and it can go places faster and it is healthier. Um, and, I'm just really grateful that I have that because um, that wasn't really a goal at all, of this, but it has really kind of changed my mindset about what I'm able to do, and kind of what I think about my body. I'm just not as concerned about what I look like in a bathing suit anymore. And that's a huge win for me and a really big thing.
That's a huge win. I love that. And now seeing it as something that can lift heavy things and go faster. Like that's a great switch from the mindset that us who are brought up as females can tend to have. Yes. Well, Paige, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your journey. I think so many listeners are going to love hearing from start to finish where you came from to crossing the finish line, all 4 races at Dopey with a hot Dopey. Are
Hmm.
there any last things that we didn't talk about that you think would be good to share or you want to share?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it all. That's really kind of the journey. And it's nice to, a couple of months afterwards, be able to really reflect back on, everything I learned, and just sort of bring it all together in one sitting. So thank you for that opportunity.
Absolutely. You have done such an amazing job to see where you were pre springtime surprise and now all the way past Dopey, the accomplishments. We talked about crossing the finish line, but those accomplishments of changing your mindset of this is what my body can do, this is what my daughter gets to see it do. That is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Allie.
Please take what you've learned in this episode and use it to adjust your strategy for your Run Disney race training. It's not about doing more, it's about doing the right things in the right balance so you can finish strong, not broken. And if you want personalized guidance specific to your race, your injury history, your running background, and your goals, that's exactly what we do inside Stronger, Faster, Finisher. You'll get step-by-step instructions and a proven system to help you train smarter from start to finish. Join the waitlist today to be the first to know when it opens next. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.